I still remember the exact moment my heart turned to stone. It's funny how, after a lifetime of silent sacrifices and swallowing pain, it wasn't some grand betrayal that finally broke me. It was a baby shower invitation. A single embossed card tied with a pale blue ribbon arrived on a Tuesday afternoon and shattered everything I held on to. My name is Elizabeth Harmon. Most people call me Ellie, though my daughter Cassandra, or Cassie, hasn't called me anything at all in nearly 2 years. I live alone in a modest ranch-style house in Deer Creek, Missouri. It's the same home where I raised Cassie and her brother Michael after their father walked out on us. Back then, the house echoed with life, music, arguments, door slams, laughter. Now it holds only the soft tick of the hallway clock and the occasional meow from Churchill, my cat, my one loyal companion. The invitation read, "You are cordially invited to celebrate the upcoming arrival of baby boy Reynolds, hosted by Cassie and James." 2 years of silence, and suddenly this. Not a phone call, not a conversation, just a formal invitation to celebrate a grandchild I didn't even know existed. I should have thrown it away. But hope is a stubborn thing. I called Michael first. My son, the eternal peacemaker. He still visited for holidays and birthdays, though always alone, never with Lisa, his wife, or their 2 kids. "You should go, Mom," he said, choosing each word with care. "Cassie talks about you sometimes. Pregnancy has changed her. She's softer." "What does she say?" I asked. "She misses how things used to be," he replied after a pause. I didn't mention that how things used to be meant me working double shifts to keep a roof over our heads while Cassie lived rent-free after her divorce, or how I babysat her kids every weekend while she found herself through a series of reckless relationships. I didn't remind him that I co-signed the loan for her boutique, the one that failed and left me with $40,000 in debt. Instead, I said I miss her too, and I meant it. Hope, foolish as it felt, had not yet given up on me. I spent $300 I didn't really have on a soft cashmere baby blanket in sky blue. I had my hair done for the first time in months. I bought a dress that covered the weight I had gained from too many nights spent eating ice cream alone. I rehearsed what I would say when I saw her, not about the past, not about the silence, just how happy I was for her, how excited I was to meet my grandchild. The baby shower was held at a vineyard about an hour outside town, a picturesque place with rolling hills and a renovated barn strung with fairy lights. I recognized a few faces from Cassie's old circle of friends and relatives on James's side. Michael was there too with Lisa. They didn't see me arrive. Cassie was radiant in a white flowing dress, her belly round, her face glowing. She still had that smile, the kind that could win over a room in a second. She looked straight at me for the first time in years. Her smile wavered. "You came," she said, giving me a quick, stiff hug. "Of course," I replied, trying to hide the trembling in my voice. "You look beautiful." She nodded, eyes darting around the room. "There's food and drinks over there. I need to greet the rest of the guests." And just like that, she was gone, swept away in a sea of well-dressed women who laughed and touched her belly like it was some sacred object. I found a seat near the back and placed my gift on the overflowing table. When the waiter offered champagne, I asked for water. I wanted a clear head, no missteps, no reason for anyone to whisper behind their hands about the mother. An hour passed. I made polite small talk with someone who didn't know who I was. I watched as Cassie opened gift after gift, cooing over handmade quilts and tiny onesies. Mine stayed at the bottom of the pile. Then came the speeches. James spoke first, beaming with pride. Then Lisa, yes, Lisa, my daughter-in-law, read a poem about motherhood that made some women cry. She didn't once glance my way. Finally, Cassie stood, a hand on her belly, a glass of sparkling water in the other. "I want to thank all of you for being here," she said. "Starting a family is scary and beautiful, and I'm grateful for your support." Then she turned. Not to me, but to a silver-haired woman in a designer dress, Patricia Reynolds, James's mother. "I especially want to thank someone who has been a guiding light these past few years. Someone who showed me what true motherhood looks like, patient, understanding, unconditional." My breath caught. "This is for you, Patricia. You are the woman I wish had raised me. The only grandmother my child will ever know." The room erupted in applause. I did not. No one noticed when I stood up. No one noticed when I left the barn, walked across the gravel path to my car, and sat behind the wheel with my hands clenched tight. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even later. What I felt wasn't sadness. It was something colder, something cleaner, like ice water being poured down my spine. Every slight, every unspoken insult. Every time I told myself, but they're my children. It all came back in sharp, unbearable clarity. I drove home in silence, the kind that stretches out so long it becomes a second skin. That night, I didn't toss or turn. I didn't stay up replaying her words in my head. Instead, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, the one who'd drawn up my will after the divorce, back when I still believed my children would care for me in old age. I asked to make changes. The second call was to Frank Delaney, an old friend, once a maybe romance, now a private investigator with a talent for digital digging. I asked him for a favor. The third was to the storage facility across town. I reserved a climate-controlled unit and arranged for 24-hour access. By sunrise, I had already packed the first of many boxes. Photo albums, baby books, kindergarten drawings, birthday cards with shaky handwriting, all of it. Decades of memories kept like treasures because that's what mothers do. But I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was something else now. As I loaded the boxes into my trunk, my phone rang. Michael. Mom, where did you go yesterday? Cassie was looking for you. The lie came easily. I wasn't feeling well, the drive, the heat. I didn't want to ruin her day. He sounded relieved. Maybe because he wouldn't have to explain my absence to Cassie. She wanted to thank you for the blanket, he added. Said it was really nice. I'm glad she liked it, I said, my voice soft, neutral. Listen, Mom, what Cassie said about Patricia, she didn't mean it like that. Of course, I replied. People say things, and sometimes I think those things are exactly what they mean. That conversation was the final seal. The moment I knew there was no going back, not to who I had been, not to what they thought I would always be. Tomorrow I would begin my plan because I had finally learned what they had always known. That love without respect isn't love. It's servitude. And I was done serving. It's exactly 1 week after the baby shower. The first package arrived at Cassie's doorstep. A shirt required a signature, delivered at 9 a.m., just early enough to disrupt their morning, but not early enough to be called rude. Inside was a single leather-bound binder. On the front, embossed in gold, financial records. Cassandra Reynolds, 2015 to 2023. There was no note, no explanation, just 8 years' worth of bank statements, receipts, loan agreements, meticulously organized. Every dollar I'd lent her, every bill I'd covered, every last-minute rescue mission I quietly handled. The total, $157,482. That afternoon, as I trimmed my rose bushes and Churchill dozed in a sunbeam, my phone rang. Cassie's voice came through, shrill and sharp. What the hell is this? Hello, Cassandra, I said calmly. I assume you received my gift. Gift? You call this a gift? It's a list of every penny you've ever spent on me. What are you trying to prove? I snipped a wilted bloom watching it fall. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm simply organizing my affairs. You want me to pay you back now? Is that it? Are you trying to guilt me over what Patricia said? I almost laughed. You're the one who stood in front of a room and said she was the mother you wished had raised you. I reminded her the only grandmother your child would ever know. There was silence. You know I didn't mean it like that, she said, her voice brittle. I was emotional. Pregnant women say things. Yes, I replied, still pleasant. And sometimes those things are exactly what they mean. So this is revenge, she spat. You're tallying up what you think I owe you for being my mother? Not at all. Think of it as a baby gift, a legacy really. A detailed history of generosity for you to pass down to your son. You're unbelievable, she said, her voice cracking. I'm hanging up. Before you do, I added gently, you might want to tell Michael to check his mail tomorrow. She hung up. I returned to my roses, the sun warming my shoulders. Churchill stretched lazily at my feet, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. The next day, Michael received his own delivery. It was similar to Cassie's, financial records, dates, totals, but it also included something more. Printed emails, texts, conversations between him and Cassie discussing the mom situation, jokes about my emotional neediness, warnings to keep their kids away from me, plans to exclude me quietly without confrontation. Frank Delaney had done excellent work. Michael, as always, had been sloppy with his passwords. His call came in the evening. His voice was quiet, controlled. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Hello, Michael. Did you get something interesting in the mail?" A long pause. "This isn't like you." "No," I asked, truly curious. "What am I like then?" Another pause. "You forgive. You let things go." "Ah," I said, tasting the soup I was cooking. "And how has that worked out for me?" He didn't answer, and for once I didn't need him to. The next morning, 2 identical manila envelopes arrived at Cassie's and Michael's homes. Inside each was a copy of my new will, dated the day after the baby shower. It was clear, unapologetic. 50% of my estate, my home, savings, and life insurance would go to the local animal shelter where I volunteered. 25% would fund scholarships for single mothers at the nearby community college. And the remaining 25%, a trust reserved for any grandchild who chose to contact me after turning 18. There was nothing for Cassie, nothing for Michael D. I also included documentation of the irrevocable trust I had set up, one that made it nearly impossible to contest the will. I had learned my lesson thoroughly. Cassie called, screaming. I let it go to voicemail. Michael texted, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I prepared the final delivery. This one was heavier, symbolic. 3 large boxes delivered with care, addressed to each of my children. They contained photo albums, baby books, art projects, birthday cards, school awards, all the evidence that I had been a present, loving mother, that I had shown up, documented, cared. But there was one difference. Everywhere my name had once appeared, Mom, Love, Proud Parent, Ellie Harmon, I had replaced it digitally, permanently, with the name Patricia Reynolds. Each photo where I had stood proudly beside them, first days of school, piano recitals, science fairs, had been edited. My image carefully removed, replaced with Patricia's elegant silver-haired figure. The woman Cassie had said she wished had raised her. 3 hours later, Cassie appeared at my door. She was red-eyed, holding one of the altered boxes like it might shatter in her hands. Michael followed closely behind. I opened the door, blocking the threshold. Cassie didn't even say hello. "How could you do this?" she demanded. "These were our memories, were they?" I asked calmly. "You seem to prefer Patricia and them." Michael looked around the living room, confused. It had changed. I had taken down all their photos, packed away their knickknacks. The space was clean, orderly, almost sterile. "I honored your words," I said simply. "You declared Patricia your true mother. I made the record match." "So this isn't right," Cassie said, voice shaking. "It's manipulative. It's sick." "Is it?" I asked. "You stood in front of a room of people and erased me with a smile. Was that any different?" Michael tried to interject, his hands raised like a referee. "Mom, what Cassie said was wrong. We both know that, but this is too far." "What's too far, Michael? Keeping a record?" I responded without tears. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was simply done. I don't want apologies. I don't need explanations. I'm not here to be your punching bag or your backup plan. They stared at me like they didn't recognize the woman in front of them. Maybe they didn't. Maybe for the first time, they were finally seeing me. Not the mother who gave endlessly, but the woman who had nothing left to give. Cassie dropped the box onto my coffee table with a loud thud. A few altered photos spilled out. Her 5th birthday party, her high school graduation, all of them now featuring Patricia. "This is sick," she said, her voice shaking. "You photoshopped our childhood." I gestured for them to sit, calm as ever. "I honored your reality, your words. I made our history match the roles you chose for me and for her." "This isn't reality," she snapped. "No," I asked. "You stood up and told a room that Patricia was the mother you wished had raised you, that she would be the only true grandmother to your child. I'm simply adjusting to that truth." Michael stepped in, always the mediator. "Mom, we know Cassie messed up. But this," he pointed to the photos, "isn't the way." "What is the way, Michael?" I asked. "Should I have cried in front of everyone? Should I have begged Cassie for respect? Should I have pretended I didn't hear it?" He had no answer. Cassie began flipping through the photos, her hands trembling. "How did you even do this? There are hundreds of them." "I had time," I said, "and motivation." She looked up at me, eyes red. "What do you want from us? Is this supposed to hurt us? Make us feel guilty?" I paused before answering. "No, Cassie, not guilt. Not even pain. This isn't about emotions anymore. It's about truth. about consequences, about the stories we tell ourselves and the ones we live. Michael ran a hand through his graying hair. So what now? You cut us out of your will. You erase yourself from our memories. You keep ledgers of everything. What's the endgame here? Nothing, I said. I want nothing from either of you. That's the point. They stared at me, confused. I've spent decades wanting to be seen, to be included, to matter. I'm done wanting. I'm done hoping. I'm done accepting treatment from you both that I wouldn't tolerate from strangers. Cassie clutched her belly. So that's it. You're abandoning your own children, your grandchild. I looked at her clear-eyed. Abandonment requires obligation. You've both made it clear I am nothing more than a placeholder, an afterthought. I'm simply accepting that. Michael stepped forward. This isn't like you. The version of me you knew, I said, was a role I played, a mother who gave endlessly without expecting anything in return. That woman no longer exists. Cassie's voice turned desperate. We can fix this. We can talk it out. There's nothing to fix, I replied. This isn't a punishment. It's a boundary, one I should have set years ago. I walked to the door and opened it. You should go. Michael hesitated. Will you at least think about coming to the funeral for closure? I found my closure 2 years ago, I said, when I finally accepted that the children I raised were not the adults I'd hoped they'd become. They left. I didn't watch them drive away. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my porch. Churchill curled at my feet. The house was quiet, the peace profound. That night I slept soundly. No dreams, no regrets. Just the kind of rest that comes when a weight you didn't know you were carrying is finally gone. The next day, I changed my phone number. The day after that, I closed all my social media accounts. Within the week, I started volunteering at a literacy center, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Between Cassie's crisis and Michael's requests, my days slowly shifted into new rhythms. Mornings with adult students learning to read, afternoons in the garden, evenings curled up with Churchill, and a book I had long meant to finish. 3 months passed. Fall arrived in a blaze of orange and crimson. I planted tulip bulbs, daffodils, 2 tiny promises buried beneath the earth, waiting for spring. Cassie never called. Michael didn't write. And for once, I didn't wonder why. Then one quiet afternoon, I received a card in the mail. A birth announcement. Alexander James Reynolds, 7 elves, 4 O's, 21 inches long. Dot. There was a photo, a red-faced baby wrapped in the cashmere blanket I had bought months ago. On the back, in Cassie's handwriting, your grandson. If you want to meet him, call me. Dot. I set the card on the mantel. Next to it, a photo from a recent museum fundraiser. Me surrounded by new friends, smiling in a way I hadn't in years. I looked at Alexander's picture. I felt something. Not regret, not pain, just a quiet acknowledgement of what could have been. But I didn't call. Some bridges, once burned, should remain ashes. 1 year passed, then 2. I sold the old house and bought a smaller place near the lake. It had a sunroom where Churchill could sleep in sunbeams and a wildflower garden that bloomed with color every spring. I dated briefly a kind widower named Robert who taught architecture at the community college. We shared dinners, laughed often, and agreed that friendship suited us best. Sometimes I heard bits of news through town. Michael had been passed over for partner. Cassie's boutique failed. James filed for divorce and had custody of Alexander. Patricia Reynolds had a sudden stroke and passed away. They were struggling, and yet I felt no need to return. No maternal pull to rescue, to fix, to give. Because I finally understood something I wish I had known all along. That love without boundaries isn't love. It's servitude. I had spent my life teaching my children how to take. But in the end, the most important lesson I ever gave them was how it feels when the giving stops. And whether they learned it or not no longer mattered because I did. And that at last was enough. Let us know in the comment, where are you watching from? Please subscribe to the channel Her Side of the Story. Thanks for watching until here.